I had a situation, I won't say the business, but I had a situation where we had a third-party manufacturer that made the product.
Yep.
So we didn't manufacture it. It was made by somebody else for us. And I wanted to be quite aggressive in driving that cost down, because I think when we started working with them, we paid X price. And then here we were a few years later buying 50 times more, paying the same price. So I thought, quite reasonably, we should get a better price, that we were now a very big customer. And the founder I worked with didn't really like the idea of that.
Because?
Well, it just wasn't really the way they did things.
Right.
So going in and saying, can I have a cheaper price? Or manufacturing a situation.
That links the abnormalities.
Yeah. It just wasn't the way it's been very successful without us having to resort to those crass tactics of trying to get a better price. So we had a bit of a disagreement on it, and in the end we did it. And they were quite uncomfortable about doing it, but it worked. And in this particular business, it transformed the economics from being
How did you broach the conversation with the manufacturer on the price? Because that's another, again, I've got to work with in terms of pricing and negotiating and stuff.
Well, I mean, that's a whole massive topic about how do you negotiate a better price. I mean, but one of my rules is that if you're going to negotiate a better price, you'd need an alternative. So if you want to buy better microphones at a better price, you need to have gone and found an equivalent microphone somewhere else cheaper, so you can at least start the negotiation. If you don't have an alternative, you're going to be a crap negotiator, unless you're some kind of genius, because you've got nowhere to go. So I think in this instance, we had an alternative that we could have worked with if we wanted to. So it gave us a very strong negotiating base.
What about, I know, as I say, we all jump all over the shop, but what about in terms of negotiating the big deals when it comes to the exit? Is that the same sort of principle of like having would you have two multinationals up against each other, or like?
Well, if you're selling anything, whether it's your house, your car, or your business, the best thing is to have more than one potential buyer. So it's basic stuff. It's back to common sense.
Yeah, but this is...
So the trick with exiting a business at the best possible price, apart from, is it in a big category? Do we have a superior product? Have we made the brand highly recognizable? Does it have international potential, etc.? You need to have lots of people wanting to buy it. And it sounds bloody obvious, but a lot of people just run the business, get to the point, go, I've got to the size I want it to be, we want to sell it now. And that's that. So if you want to sell to a multinational, there aren't many of them. And
how many are there, would you say? Like,
well, you've got the biggest ones. There's probably 10 of those, and then you've got smaller. But there's all sorts of smaller ones that turn over sort of 6 or 7 billion that you've never even heard of.
Yeah.
So there's a lot.
A small one.
There's a lot, but that's part of the challenge. So we would always work with a third-party banker whose job it is to flush out all potential buyers. So I might know the big ones, but if you went to see a banker, they might say, well, there's about 12 people in Asia who are of that size, who like your asset that you've never heard of, but because they've only been going a short period of time, or you don't know that part of the world. So part of the way you flush out as many buyers as possible is you work with a banker. And so all these businesses get sold through, and they're going to hate this, like an estate agent for businesses. So it's like going to an estate agent and saying, I could just put a board outside my house, but I'm going to go to you because you're an estate agent. Well, they're like an estate agent for businesses, and they'll hate this, but they're far better than that, of course. Some of them are. And so they flush out as many buyers as possible. The other point on getting the best exit is that you need to give it time. So let's say there are two people that are the perfect acquirers for your business. And let's say we're in the microphone business. Yeah. There's two big makers of microphone, and I've got this cool new brand here, which is just got to 100 million of sales, highly profitable, growing like a train. One of them might have just bought a microphone business, and therefore he's not in the market anymore. Because that happens. There are other microphone businesses out there, and one's just bought one 6 months ago, and he's having indigestion trying to absorb that into his business. So you think, oh, it's great, I'll go and sell it now. And then you find out that this one here, of the two, can't buy you because he's busy absorbing the previous business he bought. So now you've only got one buyer, and that other buyer will know that buyer is not in the market. So you've got one buyer, and he knows he's the only buyer in town.
How would they know? How would that know?
Because in the industry, they saw in in the microphone equivalent of the grocer, they'll have read,
Okay,
competitor number 2 buys new microphone business. So they'll know.
Yeah.
So they know there's no one up against them. Fantastic for them. So you don't sell the business then. So if you're not a forced seller, you do not sell the business then.
Patience is a massive game in this.
Yeah. Time. If you've got time, you'll do fine. Oh, I made that up.
Yeah. Time. But this is brilliant. That's a
If
great.
you've got the time, you do. If you're a forced seller, you never get a good price.
When you say forced seller, sorry.
Well, okay. So often a business could be doing well, but one of the investors in the business needs their money out. So you could have invested in Costa Malika. It's doing incredibly well, but you might have invested in 5 other food companies that have had a disaster, and you need to show a success for your fund. So even though you could hang on to Costa Malika for 2 more years and have an even better outcome, you could sell it now and double your money. You might sell it now because you need to show your fund that not everything you do is fucking useless, and because you've 4 other failures, and you've got the Costa. So you sell the Costa business early to prove to your investors that not everything you do is bad. That happens all the time. Things get sold early, so that's a forced seller.
Okay. Wow.
You're forced to sell.
Thought of that.
Yeah.
And I suppose if you're in that situation, you're kind of up shit creek as a founder, or like.
Well, you're not going to maximise your return.
Yeah.
That's another way of saying what you said. Yeah, you're not going to get the best outcome.
That's
Because
the businessy way of saying it.
The best outcome is to wait until all more potential buyers are available, and then you get some tension, like selling your house. You want 2 people to want your house, and then otherwise someone puts in a ridiculously low bid, and you go, well, I've only got 1 bid, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
If you've got 2 buyers, someone puts in a low bid, someone puts in a reasonable bid, and then you hope they kind of escalate and you get a great price.
This is what I was trying to this is where we are. I'm absolutely loving, because it was trying to get to this sort of this nuance of this almost exit El Dorado where the fucking dosh is, mate.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think that there's lots of guile and skill in patience
and luck.
And luck. Yeah, luck. But I think you build your own luck personally. But like patience and focus are 2 of those things. What are some other sort of ways in terms of the sort of things that you didn't really necessarily think about that weren't obvious in terms of the exit stuff? Kind of a bit like the linking it back to the team stuff, the time zone.
Yeah, well, I think one of the key things in life is empathy. So if you want to successfully sell something, whether it's your first box of soap powder when you're a salesman, or you're selling a business for £300 million, the key is to empathise with the buyer and understand what their motivation is. If you're the buyer of a business in a multinational, so you're head of M&A at a giant business, you want to buy businesses that do well, are a success, and they reflect well on you. That's sort of obvious. But you also don't want to take too much of a risk, because you've got yourself into this wonderfully elevated position in a large company. You're well remunerated, you've got a great life. So people tend to be quite cautious. So one of the ways of dealing with that is to give them a really long runway to the business becoming available. So if you just turn up and say, this business, which you've never heard of, is going to be sold in the next 3 months, I think you should have a look. They're thinking, well, I'm the head of M&A. You've told me I'm going to need to review that, get my team looking at it. I've then got to present that the next time our company has a board meeting and there's a slot for potential M&A. I'm going to have to bring this to the board. If you work for a multinational, maybe only 4 times a year would they have a meeting on M&A. So if you come in and say, well, it's going to be sold in 3 months, there's no way they're going to bid for you, because they're not going to interrupt the board doing what they're doing and say, I want you to look at this. You've never heard of the business. Frankly, I've never heard of it, but it's for sale. So what you do is about 18 months before you sell the business, you go and meet these people and you say, look, we're not for sale today. We haven't met before. You might not know the brand. Or let me tell you a bit about it. And they go, oh, and maybe you're lucky. And they go, well, that's interesting. And then that goes on their list of things that they might acquire at some point in the future. And then when they have their quarterly M&A presentation in front of the board, up goes your name. And someone goes, well, I've not heard of this one here. Well, who's that? And then, well, it's this. It's doing very well. It's in our category. It's quite small at the moment. It's not for sale today, but one to bear in mind. And then 6 months later, when there's the half-yearly review of M&A, you're a bit higher up the list. Oh, it's that one again. How's it doing? Well, actually, the guy, David, he came in to see me. He happened to be passing our office, so we had a coffee. I've made an appointment to go and see him, but you say, I'm in your city, can I come and see you? It's doing even better. It's now brand number 2 in the category. We really should look at this. And then about 6 months later, a year after you first met him, when you go to market and the banker rings him up and said, have you heard of this business that David Milner's running? Yes, we have actually. Well, it's for sale. Someone's made a bid on it. If you are interested, you'd need to get your act together. He puts the phone, I think it's great. I've been looking at this for a year. The board know about it. They quite like it. This is going to be easy. So that's how you do
runway,
it.
yes.
A long runway. Don't be a forced seller. If you can't always choose that in life. But if you're not a forced seller and you can have this long runway to exit, then that's very much advantageous, particularly if you're trying to sell to a multinational. And I am, because they tend to be, that's the perfect outcome, because they'll spend more than anybody else.
Espressos is sponsored by supply chain software gurus Unleashed. It talks to your e-com and accounting software. It's helped islands cut admin time in half, get granular clarity on your margins, know where your stock is, don't miss availability. Brands like Candy Kittens, Tiny Rebel and Trip all use Unleashed, and so should you.